There are some stories that just stick around, and for over 350 years, one particular story has been this incredible roadmap for the soul, a wild adventure and a deep, deep allegory all rolled into one. We are talking about John Bunyan's masterpiece, The Pilgrim's Progress, a tale that, believe it or not, all starts with a dream. And the craziest part? Bunyan himself said the story just appeared. He was in the middle of writing a totally different book when this idea of a journey to glory just started exploding in his mind, multiplying, as he put it, like sparks that from the coals of fire do fly. He knew right then he had to give this story its own life. And thank goodness he did, because it became one of the most translated books in history, second only to the Bible.
So why an allegory? Well, Bunyan wasn't just trying to write a fun fantasy novel. He was wrestling with these huge, complicated ideas, things like faith, doubt, sin, and temptation. By turning them into real characters and places, he made them understandable, tangible. His whole goal was to make these profound truths stick with you.
All right, so let's jump in. Our journey kicks off not in some magical, happy land, but in a place of pure and utter desperation.
First up, we meet our hero, a guy named Christian, and he's in a bad way. He's wearing rags, but these aren't just a sign of poverty. They're a symbol of his spiritual emptiness. And he lives in the city of destruction, which is exactly what it sounds like, a representation of a world that's headed for disaster. He's just had the terrifying realization that he's in very, very deep trouble.
And to make matters worse, he's carrying this massive, crushing weight on his back. This isn't just a heavy backpack. It's the physical weight of all his sin and guilt. And he knows, deep down, that this burden is going to sink him. And he has absolutely no idea how to get it off. He's completely powerless.
And that leads him to this one, desperate question. This is the cry that launches the entire adventure. It's not a casual thought. It's this gut-wrenching plea for a way out. This single question is the engine that drives the whole story forward.
But of course, the path to an answer isn't a walk in the park. The very first obstacle he hits is this disgusting, muddy bog called the Slough of Despond. And it's not really a physical swamp, it's a mental one. It's made of all the fears, doubts, and crushing despair that can totally swallow you whole when you first realize you need to change.
And we see just how tough this is going to be right away with his first travel companion. A neighbor named Pliable decides to join him, and he's super enthusiastic at first, but the second they fall into the Slough of Despond and get covered in mud, he's done. He basically says, forget this. You can have this brave new country all to yourself. It's a perfect picture of how easily some people give up when the going gets tough. So Christian manages to pull himself out of the bog, but the challenges are about to get a whole lot more complex. Now he's up against enemies that are going to attack his mind, his body, and his very soul.
These new threats really come in three different flavors. First, you've got the temptation of taking an easy shortcut. Then, there's a straight-up, violent physical attack. And finally, the all-consuming distraction of worldly pleasures. Each one is designed to test him in a completely different way.
The first danger comes from a character named Mr. Worldly Wiseman. And he's so dangerous because he sounds so reasonable. He tells Christian, hey, that path they're on is way too hard. I know a much easier way. Just go to the village of morality and ask a guy named Mr. Legality to take that burden off for you. It's the ultimate temptation, a promise to get the reward without the struggle. Well, after he escapes that bit of bad advice, Christian finds himself in the Valley of Humiliation, and the threat here is not subtle at all. He comes face to face with Apollyon, a hideous monster with scales, dragon wings, and a lion's mouth. This isn't a clever debate, it's a brutal, knockdown, drag-out fight for his life, a powerful picture of what intense spiritual warfare feels like.
And if fighting a literal monster wasn't enough, the road takes him right through the middle of a place called Vanity Fair. Think of it as a city that's also a non-stop festival, a giant trap designed to distract you. It's a place where you can buy and sell absolutely anything you can imagine. Promotions, titles, power, pleasure, even people's souls.
So surrounded by every temptation possible, the merchants start yelling, "What do you buy? What do you buy?" And the answer from Christian and his new companion, Faithful, is just incredible. They simply say, "We buy the truth." This answer is so bizarre, so completely alien to the people of Vanity Fair that it actually starts a riot. It just goes to show how radically different their values are from the world around them. Okay, so the journey is about to take a really dramatic turn. The biggest threat is no longer a monster or a city full of temptations. Now, the greatest enemy is the one inside Christian's own head.
despair. Tragically, Faithful is executed for his beliefs back at Vanity Fair. It's a devastating loss, but out of that darkness, a new friendship emerges. Christian is joined by a man named Hopeful, who is actually a citizen of Vanity Fair, but was inspired by their testimony. And let me tell you, his name is going to become so important.
Trying to find an easier bit of road, they decide to take a little shortcut. Bad idea. A really, really bad idea. This tiny compromise leads them straight off the path and onto the property of Giant Despair, who captures them and throws them into the dungeon of Doubting Castle.
And this is absolute rock bottom. The giant beats them without mercy. They're starving in the dark with no way out. The giant even tries to convince them that taking their own lives is the only option. Christian is just crushed by the guilt of leading them there, and he's ready to give up completely.
But then, just when all hope seems lost, Christian has this sudden epiphany. He shouts, "What a fool am I to lie in a stinking dungeon when I may as well walk at liberty." He suddenly remembers something he's had all along, a key in his pocket, a key called Promise, and he realizes this key can open any lock in Doubting Castle. It is the breakthrough moment.
So, they've escaped the giant, they've navigated some treacherous land, and now they can actually see it. The celestial city is in sight. But of course, there's one last very personal test they have to face.
And it's a big one. To get to the city's gate, they have to cross a deep, dark river. And here's the catch. There's no bridge. The depth of the water depends entirely on the faith of the person crossing. For Christian, the river is terrifyingly deep. All his past sins and fears come flooding back, and he starts to sink, absolutely convinced he's not going to make it.
And this is where we see a really stark contrast that gets to the heart of the whole book. Christian and Hopeful struggle like crazy, but with their faith, they finally make it across and are greeted with trumpets and a huge celebration. But then, another traveler arrives, a guy named Ignorance. He finds a ferry and gets across the river no problem. But when he gets to the gate, they ask for his certificate, the scroll Christian was given at the beginning of his journey, and he doesn't have one. He's immediately thrown out. And after seeing Ignorance cast away, the narrator has this bone-chilling realization. It's a shocking warning that getting close isn't the same as getting in. It suggests that a kind of smug self-confidence without a real tested faith is actually the most dangerous thing of all. In his introduction to the book, Bunyan tells us not to just play with the outside of my dream, but to really dig into the metaphors to find the gold inside. So looking at this epic journey, from rags to riches, from despair to glory, it makes you think, right? What are the Sloughs of Despond, the Vanity Fairs, and the Doubting Castles that we run into in our own lives? And maybe the most important question of all, where do we find our own key of promise?